Get this, adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Wondery. Greenlight.com/Wondery.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the prosecutors. Everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, with my onomatopoeia co-host, Al.
Thank you, bro.
We're here to talk about the Murdaugh trial, and today, the latest development, Alec Murdaugh taking the stand. Who could have predicted that he would do something like that? I can't think of anyone. Oh, that's right. I did. Weeks ago.
Brett.
Weeks ago, told you that he was going to take the stand, and sure enough, he did. And the reason he took the stand, Clayton Waters actually nails it right at the beginning of his cross when he asked him, the reason you took the stand is because you have to explain why you're in that video. Right? Which is exactly right. And I think that's really important to remember when we talk through this. That is the most damning piece of evidence in this case. Without that video, who knows? Maybe Alec Murdaugh gets off. But with the video, you know he was at the scene of the crime a few minutes before the crime happened. Oh, and by the way, he lied to all the police about being there. So that's really why I always thought he had to take the stand, because he had to explain that. And Alice, I'm sure you noticed, it was one of the very first things that he gets asked about. The first thing is the standard, did you kill your wife? Did you shoot your son? And all this other stuff. And he's like, no, I didn't do that. And so then they ask him, were you in that video? And what does he say?
Yes. Because he cannot hide from it. And, you know, Brett is brilliant. All of you guys typing on the side that he's brilliant. I 100% agree. But don't give him so much credit, y'all. He being Alec Murdaugh, was completely effed. He had to take the stand. He really did. We'll talk more about what his attorneys may have said, but I don't think he had a choice. He absolutely had to take the stand because that's his voice. They've never challenged it. They haven't tried to go around it. So I think they've known that he had to take the stand for a very long time. That's why they avoided the confusion of, is it him, is it not him? They knew he had to explain it. And boy, does he not explain it.
He doesn't explain it at all.
Not at all. But not at all. I mean, okay, so this is really important, guys. You take the stand, and he does take the stand. And we've heard his voice a lot because we've had videos of him talking to law enforcement. This is not the first time we've heard him speak, and he is in full lawyer mode. What do I mean by that? Lawyers are the worst people to take the stand because they reference the rules of evidence. They talk about other testimony and evidence. And I'd love to hear what you guys think, but this it comes off very fake to me, okay? I don't care if he's a lawyer, a solicitor, what have you. He is a man who is on trial for the murder of his son and wife. And the more he talks about, as so-and-so testified, as you saw in this piece of evidence that they admitted, as you've heard about in the boat case, it is so disingenuous because you know what? The reason you're taking the stand and your own lawyer recognized it is because you were the one there. I don't care what the other evidence said. You were standing right there and you need to explain yourself, and he doesn't.
Yeah, I was talking to Bob about this because, I like to get Bob Motta's views on things because he's such a defense attorney and he's always going defense attorney ways. And he was like, I think the prosecution needs to do more to show that he committed murder. And I'm like, no, that's the exact opposite. He is on the stand because he knows at this point he's guilty. The jury's going to find him guilty.
He just said, I have to be on the stand because currently I am guilty unless I can get myself out of it.
I mean, Harpootlian basically said that before he got up there, not in front of the jury, but he basically told the judge with all the evidence that's in, we're totally going to lose. If that evidence hadn't come in, maybe he wouldn't take the stand, but now he needs to take the stand. And he has to convince you that his story is legitimate because he's up against all this evidence. So, there's so many people who are wrong about this and sort of the commenting about this and about the prosecution and what they're doing. They're wrong about it, and they're completely wrong about the prosecution and their approach. And we'll talk about that more later. But the most important thing is Alec Murdaugh has to convince you that his excuse for why he lied to the police is true. If he can't do that, if it doesn't work, then he is guilty. It's as simple as that. He is guilty because he is up there trying to explain this thing to you that he knows makes him look guilty. And if he can't explain it away, then that's it. And that's the great thing about when the defendant testifies, is if you don't believe him, that's enough. Like on appeal, all his appeals, other than his 404B stuff, he might still be able to win on that. But most of his appeals are completely blown because the appeals court will say, you testified, the jury heard you, they could not believe you, that's enough to convict you. So that's one reason it's such a huge gamble to testify, but he had to because of that story. And if you didn't hear today, what is his story? What did he say? Why did he lie? He admits that he lied. He says he lied. He gets asked, why did you lie to the police on multiple occasions about where you were that night? And he says, well, my addiction. He falls back on his addiction, right? And he says, my addiction made me very paranoid. And so I didn't trust the police and I didn't trust SLED. And since I didn't trust them, I lied about this thing, which let's talk about that for a second. You have a man who is an assistant solicitor who has the police in his pockets. He certainly wasn't afraid of the police when he was at the boat crash for his son, talking to all the police, getting them to do things for him. He is somebody who owns the police, and he doesn't say to the police, I'm not going to talk to you. He doesn't say to the police, you can't come into my house. You can't have my cell phone. He cooperates with them all over the place, which he says repeatedly. But on this one thing, this one question that just so happens to be the one question we know he was lying about, at that point, he didn't trust the police. So rather than tell them that he'd been down at the kennels, which could have been helpful, I don't know, in finding out who killed your wife and your kid, he lied about this one little thing. And, it just so happens that's the thing we have proof about. Okay, okay.
And by the way, this is, in addition to everything brilliantly said, as Brett said, it was also amazing because they've come on and said, aren't you the man who also keeps your, fake police badge in your pocket and pinned to your shirt and on your cup holder? And why is it? And he himself says to get better treatment from the police. And I mean, this is a man who knows how to work the police. So let's say he does think the police are corrupt. He's kind of saying that. And he's saying he knows how to pull the levers. Well, you know how to pull the levers for you. So there is absolutely no punch to you saying that you don't trust the police. And I'm sorry. Way to try to seize on the whole controversy of police being corrupt, which is a theme, obviously, in our judicial system that we hear a lot that there are riots about, but he doesn't even seize upon it in the correct way because he is part of the problem.
And look, we're going to talk a lot about this, but it is it is, I had laid out sort of what I thought he should say, which was kind of a variation on this, but way better than what he actually said. And we're going to talk a lot about it because it's not just that. So that's absurd. You know, there's the fact that of all the people in the world to claim they don't trust the police. I mean, come on, Alec Murdaugh. You know, you are not you are not the person who's going to convince people that you are worried about the police and how they, you know, they might not give you good treatment or judge you based on who you are or whatever the reasoning is behind that. But the other thing that was really interesting, this is the most important thing. This is the whole reason he's up there. How long did the questioning last on this? Did it last a minute? He got no follow-ups. So he's talking about this, about how he's down there at the kennels and with the bird. And we're going to go through the timeline in a second. He's with the bird, and then he gets the bird out of the mouth. And then he, as he says, got out of there, right? Like, I got out of there. Not,
why would you need to get out of your own property?
I know. Not, well, you know, I left because I was tired. Or, well, you know, I told Mags and Paw that I was going to go see my mom. Or I told them I was getting sweaty. I mean, nothing. It was just, I put the chicken down and then I got out of there, right? And it is such a bizarre way to describe what happened, and he gets no follow-up. Because the natural question is, I mean, did he just Irish goodbye? He was just there with his family where they happened to get killed a few minutes later, and then he just disappeared. He didn't talk to them. He didn't say anything to them. He didn't say, hey, these are my plans. And the reason he can't say that is because of the text messages. He can't say, I told him, hey, I'm going to go see my mom, and then I left and went and see my mom. Because, once again, he didn't know people would know he was down there, which is why he sent the text message to cover himself, to make it look like he was creating an alibi because he was asleep on the couch when this all happened. So once the story comes out that, no, you were down there, he screwed himself on the back end because he can't tell the more natural story of, I couldn't stay long at the kennels because I needed to go see my mom. And so I told him that. Instead,
let's do the timeline.
Let's
do the timeline real quick. Because there's so much to talk about. Yes, guys, everyone, we're going to talk about Roro. We're going to talk about Paw. We're going to talk about Mags. And by the way, if any of you kill me and get on the stand and call me a pet name, I will haunt you. I will haunt you for the rest of your life. Don't you dare call me by a pet name when you've murdered me on the stand. So let's take it back because, okay, we'll do this without commentary for those of you who didn't have 8 hours to watch Murdaugh testify today. We're going to give you his timeline and how it's different. And we learned new things today for the first time that we never knew before. So let's go all the way back. Remember, we're going to insert some of the facts that we do know. His phone is off at about 8:06 p.m. Okay, so convenient. By the way, if he were actually smart, like Heather Ashley, you're totally right. If your phone's off, you're getting murdered or you're murdering someone. If he were smart, he should have left his phone on and left it at home and just said he forgot his phone, you know, like walk down to the kennels, because then his phone is on tracking him in a different location. But, you know, whatever. Everything's a little bit half-assed here. So 8 o'clock, his phone's already off. Remember, they ate around 8:15, maybe by 8:30. Before, he said he was asleep. Can't say that anymore because, sorry, that video caught him on video. So instead, what do we have, Brett? We all walked down as a happy family, gator down to the kennels.
Well, okay. So, you know, one of the things he says that I still think is weird, he acts like he doesn't know where Paul is. So he says Paul sort of disappears off to do the things he does, right? So they eat, you know, dinner at 8:15. By 8:30, Paul's heading to the kennels, but he acts like he doesn't know where Paul is. He doesn't know what Paul's doing. But Maggie says, hey, I want to go down to the kennels to see the dogs. And he's like, I don't want to go. You go on your own. So she leaves to go down to the kennels, apparently alone, even though we have testimony from several people who said Maggie doesn't do that. She doesn't like to go down to the kennels at night by herself because it's dark and it's sort of isolated and it's near the woods. And so she didn't like to do that. But he claims, well, that's what she did. She's heading down the kennels by herself. And then he decided, well, you know, I guess I'll go after all. So he hops into his golf cart, one of the many vehicles they have, and he rides his little golf cart, you know, down the third of the mile to the kennels. And when he gets there, Maggie's down there, Pawpaw's down there, and they're messing with this dog, Bubba. And it's kind of funny because he dances around about whether he knew about the video at the time. Like, he talks about how he knew they were messing with the dog and stuff, but he never says that he knew he was being recorded. And I think because he did not realize that Paul was recording a video with his phone that was catching his voice at that time.
Can we talk about Bubba? Because, guys, we found out more about Bubba and the chicken and his collar and how much they love Bubba and how much Paw Paw loved Bubba and how much Mags loved Bubba than we ever heard about what happened at the kennels when he was there with his family minutes before they were murdered.
And we learned about the guard birds and how they make tons of noise when people come up, though somehow they didn't make any noise that night when the little people drug dealing murderers showed up to kill his family. But yeah, you got the guard chickens that are like, they'll make lots of noise, and this is how he catches them. And he's not trying to kill them. I mean, when you ask him, what did you do down there? Well, I don't know. I mean,
I can't remember.
It's hard to say. When you ask him about like the layout of his house, you get like where his dad used to sit, and they came in the back, and they used to love to eat dinner looking out the window, and like all this other stuff. But on the things that matter, you get nothing. But yeah, we learned so much about Bubba.
So much about Bubba and this chicken in his mouth that he's running around. And it's so interesting because he talks a lot about death and murder with respect to Bubba and the chicken, which was like way too close. There's some like beautiful, Ulysses type like novel going on over here that he doesn't even recognize as happening. So he talks about Bubba at length. And his attorney doesn't stop him because I think this is a huge mistake. Obviously, the reason he's talking so much is he thinks that he can get the jury on his side because lawyers think, and they're kind of right, even if you think someone's guilty, if you like them, you really don't want them to go to jail. And so he's trying to win them over. Here's the problem. He thinks he's winning. He thinks he is winning people over to him by calling his son Paw Paw, by calling his wife Mags. That's why he's doing it. Like we went back and forth. I was like, was he coached to call him Paw Paw, or did he decide to? I think he's so full of himself that he probably called Paw Paw when he was a baby. I seriously doubt he regularly calls Paw Paw in official things. And we know this because the prosecution brought it out when they were like, hey, you talked about Paul a lot when you were being interrogated. You never once called him Paw Paw. So when did you start calling him Paw Paw? And he's like, fine. If you want me to call Paul Paul, I'll call Paul. But I call him Paw Paw.
Yeah, and it's just, and Roro, oh God, Roro sent me over the edge.
I actually, my pregnant belly could not handle that. I laughed so hard I thought the baby was going to pop out. And yes, to answer y'all's questions, the baby's still on the inside right now. Maybe not for longer because I laughed so hard at the Roro comment.
So this is at 8:45. 8:45 is when the video happens. The video is being recorded around 8:45. It lasts for like 20 seconds, right? And he says, and Paul says that Bubba's got a chicken. He says that. And so Alec says that sort of his role in this whole thing is after Bubba gets this chicken, he needs to get the chicken out of his mouth before he kills it. Because he's not trying to kill it, but he might kill it anyway, and apparently the chicken did end up dying. So Bubba joins Alice in chicken murder. But in any event, so he gets the chicken out of his mouth, and he puts the chicken somewhere that Bubba can't get it. At this point, he got out of there. And that's all we know is some period of time after 8:45, he gets out of there without telling anybody or anything. I assume that tomorrow the prosecution, when they get to this point, which, guys, the people who keep saying, I wish they just get to the point, they're saving all this for the end. You remember the things you hear first and last. He starts with the fact he's in the video. He's hitting him on some stuff like the badge, which was great, and he's doing the money stuff. The end is going to be the murder stuff because that's where he wants to finish. That's why he hasn't said it yet. And guess what they're doing tonight? They're doing the thing they couldn't do today. They've got his testimony, the transcript of his testimony. They're sitting in a room together and they're going through exactly how they're going to attack it. Today was as much an exercise.
They are probably drinking and having so much fun.
And today was an exercise in getting to 5:30. You wanted to get to 5:30 so you get the whole night to prepare for tomorrow, and then tomorrow you're going to hammer him into the ground with everything he said today. So today was basically the things they always knew they were going to ask him about if he testified. Tomorrow we'll be really drilling into what he said. Anyways, I know we've got enough time.
That's a really good point about strategy, though, because he testified. There was a possibility that Alec was going to testify all day. He very well could have, but the judge had them start, around 3:30, 3? It was late in the afternoon. I get the Eastern Central Time a little confused. So we knew for sure that it was going to go into tomorrow. It doesn't mean that they were just dragging their feet today, because I'd like to talk about what they did today. And I thought it was actually pretty effective, even though many of you may be thinking, oh, why are they harping on the financial crimes? I think it was actually effective. But remember, they want to go into Friday they probably even want to go into Monday because the jury is going to, if they were charged, they wouldn't be able to come up with a verdict before the weekend. And I think you want kind of the last word before they go on. And also, the longer he's on the stand, the more unlikable he becomes as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves, but by the end, when he's talking about befriending the family of the kid who was a quadriplegic, and the prosecutor's like, yeah, the family that you stole all their money from, I was just like, you are such a jackass. I mean, I don't know what you did or didn't do, but man, you are a terrible person. And I don't know how anybody couldn't think that. But anyways, sort of backing up. So back to the timeline. So he's down at the 8:45 is the video. At some point after 8:45, he's wrestling with the chicken. He gets the chicken out. I forgot what we're calling Murdaugh withdraws at this point without saying anything to anybody. Gets in his little golf cart, drives back up to the house, and at this point, he lays down on the couch because he just can't let go of this story. He cannot let go of the original lie. He lies down on the couch, and despite remembering everything about everything that doesn't matter, he might have drifted off to sleep. He might not have. He's not entirely sure. So that's what he's doing now at like 8:50 or so.
Let's insert something really quick because we know this didn't come out today in cross-examination. But the time that he's drifting off to sleep now in the new timeline is precisely when his phone tracks him running around at twice the speed he was previously walking. So he is quite literally napping while running, which we'll see if the prosecution brings this out tomorrow. But he's changing his story and he's forgetting where all the evidence fits in himself. Because guess what? This happens when you lie. It's really hard to keep things straight. The truth will set you free. He is just lying down. And then, you know what? When he's drifting off, he thinks, Mama's real upset about not Paul, but like my father who bails me out of financial ruin. And she is so upset that I should go visit her right now when she's asleep, despite not getting any phone calls from the caretaker or his mother that she is in fact upset because he never received one. And why would he decide right then and there, especially when it's late in the night? He himself is falling asleep. Why not just go to sleep? 9 o'clock is a pretty normal time for people to go to sleep. And certainly people who have dementia, which we know his mom to have, and she's asleep. And you're getting your things mixed up because you were told by the caretaker that your mom was upset and may want someone to visit, except it wasn't at 9 p.m. at night. It was earlier that day, like 12 hours earlier. So much earlier, in fact, that you could have easily mentioned it to Maggie as a reason for her to come back to Moselle to come help you visit your upset mother and father who's in the hospital. Or, I don't know, at 8:45 when you were chasing Bubba with the chicken in his mouth and with your wife and son, Paul, maybe you could have said, hey, you know what? Mama's really upset. I'm going to go visit her. Y'all stay here or want to come with me? But none of that happens because it can't because we have his text messages.
Yeah, or when you're driving around the property with Paul, like shaking the fruit tree and checking the sunflowers, you could have gone to see your mom. See, that's the thing. They brought this woman on yesterday to shore up the fact that he went to see his mom that night because the prosecution had attacked him on that. And she gets up and says, well, I called him that morning and said, your mom's really upset. You should come visit her. And the whole point of that was to say, see, it was always planned. He would go see his mom. This wasn't a convenient attempt to create an alibi. And then he gets up on the stand and what does he say? He wakes up from his nap on the couch and thinks, I should go see my mom. I guess I'll go do that now. Right? And hops up and turns on his phone. And like Alice says, running around like a crazy person and decides he's going to go. And this is when he sends the text messages. He takes the SUV out of park. In between this, by the way, both Maggie and Paul's phones have fallen silent for the last time. They are talking and texting and reading text all throughout the day up until about 8:49, 4 minutes after he was there chasing Bubba around with the chicken. And then all of a sudden, they don't use their phones ever again. It's 9:02 and he's turning on his phone, which just so happened to be off during this entire period. And he takes his SUV out of park at 9:06, which means the entire time period between when the video starts and when he puts the car in drive is 22 minutes. And according to the story he told us today, in that time, he gets the chicken out of the dog's mouth, puts the chicken somewhere where it will be okay, makes his way back up to the house, lays down on the couch, may or may not have taken a nap, wakes up, decides this is a good time to go see my mom, finds his phone, turns it on, texts and calls Maggie to tell her he's going to see his mom, jumps in his car, and heads out. All of that happens in 22 minutes.
And all of that happens in about 10 minutes of testimony, despite having maybe 30 minutes of testimony about Bubba the dog. And then we get to Mama's house and about another 30 minutes of description of where the breakfast room, we call it the breakfast room. I don't know what you people call it, but we call it the breakfast room, looks out to the yard and which set of stairs he took to go into the house and what it was like growing up in that house and what his favorite window was and how the light came through the window and how you could smell the flowers. This is not an exaggeration. This is really what happened. And I say all this because clearly he has no memory problems and clearly he knows what he wants to talk about and what he does not want to talk about. All that matters is what happened in those 22 minutes. But he testifies about those 22 minutes in approximately 10 minutes.
Yeah, and the whole thing about the bed and this bed and that, I don't know. It was so weird. And it was one of those things where I was talking about this with Alice, I think, or somebody. I can't remember, about how it's just like when a child lies to you and they give you all sorts of detail about things that don't matter. It's like we had a window broken and it was a mystery how it got broken. But there was one person who was neither myself, my wife, nor my youngest child near the window when it got broken. And so we wanted to know, how did the window get broken? And we got a lot of stories that were really great about everything that happened around the window getting broken. But once it came to the window getting broken, it just kind of broke. It just sort of did it on its own. You know, it was like it was a mystery of how the window was broken. And I feel like that's what you have here. We have all this ridiculous detail on so many things that don't matter, and on the things we really want to know, like what happened in those 22 minutes. Why were you down there? Why did you leave? Where was your phone? When did you turn it on? Why were you running around?
Why'd you decide to go visit your mom at that hour? And also, if you were going to text them, why not just veer your car over to the 0.3 miles over to say, hey, y'all, Paul, Mags, I'm going to go visit your grandma. None of that. I mean, why tell us those answers? And we'll get there with the cross.
And the other thing, he says at one point that, you know, he's trying to explain why he didn't take Maggie, despite the fact he had asked her to come there for the whole purpose that his family was sick. He says, well, you know, she didn't like to visit my mom because my mom was in really bad shape. But at the same time he's telling that story, later on he tells the story about how Paul loved to visit his grandparents and did it all the time. But he makes no effort to see whether Paul wants to go see his grandmother. Doesn't happen at all. It's completely inconsistent with what he's saying. He doesn't even send Paul a text message, much less swing by the kennels where he knows he's there at this point. Whatever it was about he didn't know where he went before, he makes no effort to see whether or not Paul wants to go see his grandparents, despite what he is going to say about Paul. And it's just another thing that makes no sense in this story that he has now concocted. And
remember, if you've been following the timeline, a lot of phone calls happen during this period, and things happen when he's that have come out about trial, right? The caretaker for his mom was told by him to say that he was there longer, twice as long as he actually was there. He's not asked about any of that. Truly, he talks about the layout of the house and sitting on his mom's bed, which, by the way, you guys, is not weird because it's not the hospital bed. It's just his mom's bed, and that's where he had to sit because there's not a lot of places to sit. Lest you think I am being facetious, this is exactly the amount of information that came out. And then he goes home. And this is what is very, very calculated, and I hope the jury is seeing through it, is what he does say during that period of time is he answers questions that seem like he's been watching the news, right? He specifically answers, I drive the way I always drive. Why does he say that? Because we know from his GM, black box, that he drives really fast to see his mom and really fast to come home, much faster than he drove earlier that day. And so he's kind of telling the story out of context. He doesn't explain, like, I know you guys heard that I drove really fast, but it was dark at night. I always drive like that. Nothing. He really answers a question as if he's being quizzed, and it's disingenuous. And then he makes it home. Again, we don't hear anything about who he talks to, why he does any of this. All we know is he is now home. And so he gets home. He gets home.
I want to say another thing. There are a couple things he does, which people have ridiculously, in my opinion, praised him over acknowledging his financial misdeeds, which of course he is. He has to. That's the whole point. Come on, guys.
Guilty.
But notice some of the things he doesn't do. So on June 4th, for instance, they ask him about that, and he conveniently sort of leaves off the fact that he had, on that day, had asked his friend for $600,000 that he really needed. On June 7th, they ask him about his work day, and he's like, it's just normal work day, conveniently leaving out the fact that was the day that he was confronted. It's like, even now, when he needs to get up there and tell the truth, there are things that he just cannot bring himself to say until it is pried out of him by Jim Griffin, who, the longer it went, the more it just like Jim was just dying inside as he's asking these questions, because he got a little bit better after lunch. After lunch, Murdaugh was a little bit better. He was a little bit sort of in his flow. But the before lunch testimony was terrible. I mean, he was just awful. And you could just feel Jim being like, oh, God, why are we doing this? But he had to do it. So that he gets there, and this is the second thing he really had to answer, the 20 seconds. So the prosecution had been able to establish that there were 20 seconds between when he arrived at the kennels and when he called 911. And on 911 and in his conversations with other people, there were all these things he said he did, things that he needed to do to account for things like blood. If he killed them, he needed to have some contact with the bodies so that he could explain why he had blood on him, why there was blood on the steering wheel, like all that stuff. And sure enough, he does that. And in this testimony, he basically says that he pulls up, he kind of got out, and it's very confusing, which, granted, if you just discovered your family being murdered, this would be confusing, but nevertheless, and he sort of runs over to the bodies, runs back, then he calls 911, and then he does the things he talked about. The problem with this is you hear him on 911, and he is answering the questions, to me at least, as if he's already done these things. For instance, at one point he says that he tried to turn Paul's body over. And this is one of the things that up until this point, we've always thought he did before he called 911, but now he's trying to sort of fit that in. But imagine how this would go. He's got his cell phone. Is he got it in the crook of his neck while where he's grabbing Paul by the belt loops to try and turn him over, by the way, which is what he says? Is he doing that while he's checking his pulse? Is he doing that while he's picking up his cell phone and putting it down? Is he doing that while he's going over to Maggie and checking her pulse? It did not make sense. And if you listen to the 911 call as he's telling it, it doesn't sound like he's engaged in those activities while he's on the phone with her.
And in fact, when he's asked by the 911 operator, have you already touched, or have you tried to touch them, or did you touch them? He said, I already touched them. I tried to take their pulses. And so it's inconsistent with what he was saying on the phone call as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if he was doing all that while talking to her, he's telling her everything else he's doing. He's telling her that he's going up the house to get a gun, for instance, which also he needs to do to get the gunshot residue on his hands. Like, he's telling her all this stuff, but he doesn't mention the fact, I'm checking their pulse now. She asks again and again, do they have a pulse? Are they alive? He doesn't say, let me check. I'm going to check their pulse. He doesn't say that, right? He acts as if he's already done it, but now he's having to shift it later because we all know 20 seconds is not enough time for him to get there, get out, try and turn Paul over, check his pulse, notice that his phone has fallen out of his pocket, which is something he remembers very clearly.
Oh, can I just say something really quick? Because that piece of testimony really struck me. It was like one sentence after another. He specifically said, I looked over and on the sidewalk was Paul's brain. And then his phone fell out. And I was like, of all the things you would remember, you would see your son's brain, which is incredibly traumatic for anyone, whether you shot him or not. And then the next thing you remember is the phone. Even the way he told it seemed so, again, calculated. It didn't seem like a flow of story. And the brain kind of testimony on the ground was meant to draw sympathy, of course. But really, I'm just thinking, you're thinking about the phone at the same time as the brain because you're thinking, I busted your brain out. I need to delete all the evidence.
And Jason points out the bodies weren't next to each other. So Maggie, was a little bit of a distance away from where Paul was. So this is actually a little bit of a distance he'd be traveling. And oh, by the way, we talk about steps. This period of great activity for him, he has fewer steps per minute than he does when he's getting ready to see his mom earlier on. Yeah, slash asleep, slash, whatever, chasing the dog. I don't know what he's doing, right? Like, it just, none of it actually fits with the evidence we have. And this is why this is so important, because one of the dangers for the prosecution whenever the defendant testifies is it's kind of like the motive stuff that we've talked about some before. people will focus so much on his testimony and whether or not he appears believable. Is he likable? And like all this other stuff. And look, this man, one thing I know for sure that the prosecution did a really good job of bringing out today. This man can lie to you to your face and make you think he is your best friend. This man can manipulate you. He is on the Casey Anthony level of manipulation. This man can manipulate you better than anybody you've ever met. And he's doing that right now. And if you're watching him and thinking, oh, he's so sympathetic. Oh, Paw. Well, poor Paw. And then he called Roro. If that's what you're thinking, you were being manipulated by him. And
you should know that.
Right, you should know that. So stop, take a breath, and compare what he's saying to the hard, incontrovertible facts of the case. And when you do it, you see that it's just the myth that he's trying to put out there is so full of holes. It's completely unbelievable.
Completely unbelievable. I mean, okay, a couple of you have asked about Roro. So Roro is Rogan Gibson. He's the one who owns the dog that is the subject of the video where Alec is caught speaking on, and that's what places him at the kennels. We've never heard Roro. It came in like at hour 3 of testimony, and when he said Roro, I literally spit out water because it was so funny. And he has to explain why, when he finds his wife and son dead, after calling 911, he calls Roro a ton of times. He tries to call Roro, and he calls him Roro repeatedly. And he's asked, why are you calling Rogan of all people? It's not your best friend. It's your son's best friend. And of all the people you could call, you called the police, you could call your entire family who are around and also, part of law enforcement. Why would you call Roro? And he says, because I just love Roro and I wanted Roro there with me, which is absolutely not. We'll delve into this more. Why was he calling Roro? The reason he's calling Roro is he realizes that Rogan was the last person talking to Paul. And whether he knows about this video or not, he knows that whatever Roro has to say is going to cabin him in on his alibi, and he better get to Roro first before the police do to make sure he knows what Roro's going to say, maybe tell Roro what to say, and then fit his alibi around it. Because how do I know this? This is exactly what he did after the boat accident when he went to the hospital, and instead of checking on everyone's gruesome, tragic injuries and the fact that one of the girls that he has seen grow up is probably dead and his own son was brushed with death, instead of caring about anyone's well-being, he was running around trying to make sure that they could create reasonable doubt in any criminal case against his son. That's why he called Roro. And that's why he called Roro.
And the other thing about Roro, he says one of the reasons he called him is because he was Paul's best friend. Unfortunately for the defense, literally the person before he testified was the guy that's supposed to be Paul's best friend, the guy who was there the next day. Why didn't he call him? Why didn't he call him and say, hey, you need to come over? Because that guy wasn't in constant communication with Paul the whole time. That's why he didn't call him. He didn't call Roro because he was good friends with him or because he wanted him there with him or because he lived close by. He called him because he realized he was the one person who might be able to screw him over, and he needed to get the story straight. Just like when he told the caretaker, you need to tell anybody that asks, you need to tell them I was here for 40 minutes. He wants to get the story straight, just like he did with the boat kids. And to hear him just lie through his teeth today about how he treated the boat kids when he says, well, I didn't manipulate anyone in this trial because I remembered people said that I tried to manipulate the witnesses in the boat case, and I would never do anything like that. And it's just like, we all know you're lying. I don't know if the jury knows, but all of us here know that he is lying through his teeth. And that was what was so brilliant. When the prosecution plopped down that photograph of him there at the hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning with his fishing shirt on and that badge hanging from his pants for all the world to see. There's, you guys, there's a Poncho and Lefty, great song. And it talks about how the bandit wears his gun on the outside of his hip for all the honest world to see because he wants to intimidate them. That's why the badge is there. It didn't just happen to be sticking to his pants that day when he pulled them on. He's wanting to intimidate people. He wants to take advantage of the police, and he wants to make sure that those kids say the right thing, which is not that Paul did it. This man is like so manipulative. And to me, it just came across so much today. Like look, Alice and I are a little biased here because we've already done 7 episodes on this. So we're very well.
We're not biased. We're researched.
We're researched. Yeah, we have recorded 7 episodes on Murdaugh, and that's just on the main thing, in addition to all the other lives you guys have seen and things you've already heard. So we are very well steeped in the facts of this case at this point. But I got to tell you, until he testified today and I heard him say some of the things he heard, I did not have the visceral reaction I do to him. But the testimony today was one of the most visceral reactions I've ever had to testimony because it was so disingenuous and it was so filled with lies. And I really hope, look, I don't know how much the prosecution's going to do on rebuttal. So they'll have a rebuttal period where they can call new witnesses. And that's a strategic decision, and maybe it's better just to let it lie. But I would be seriously tempted to put every person on the stand, including all the kids from the boat case, who he's ever lied to, screwed over, intimidated, pushed around, like all the people, just go full bore. Like, okay, you want to sit up there on that stand and act like you're some upstanding person who's never done anything wrong, and frankly, that anybody who ever said anything about Paul is doing it because they have some sort of agenda when Paul was slapping his girlfriend around. I mean, just drove me crazy. And it would be really hard for me to restrain myself from just saying we are going all out. And if we have to be here for 2 more weeks so everybody knows who exactly you are, we're going to do it. It'd be hard for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the lies were so obvious. It wasn't just lies like, oh, let me tell you my version of events of what happened at 8:49. They were lies that were demonstrably like disprovable right there. For example, he said, when the prosecution was asking him, you know, when did you call Paul, row, Mags? He said all the time. Everyone calls Paul. Row calls him Paul. I'm like, Row testified, and we never heard him call Paul. And so these sorts of things, this is the way he has talked his entire life. You can tell that. The manner that in which he speaks, he has gotten out of every single thing, not because he's necessarily a Murdaugh or because he's good at talking, but for whatever reason, he's gotten out of this. And, you know, I don't have much to hang this on, but I do not think he's been this like incredibly successful person in his life. I actually think he is the family screw up. And people have just kind of been like, well, there goes Alec again, like being the screw up that he is. And he has gone on, and his family has been able to bail him out over and over. I don't actually think he's been able to bail himself out of things. I think because of the power around his family, he's been able to be bailed out of things. And I say that because that's why he thinks he's so effective on the stand, is because he's fooling, well, he's not fooling me. Unfortunately, maybe he's fooling some of you, because I saw a lot of comments during the live testimony where it was like, he's not guilty. And I'm like, how could you possibly think that? But I don't know. I'm losing faith in humanity. But everything he's saying, it's not that he believes it. He is saying it thinking he knows the effect it's having on the other person because he thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room. I'm not in the room, so I can't read the room, but it is not coming off well for me. And I'm seeing some of you guys, you know, on the sides what you thought, and most of you guys I think are agreeing with us, but you don't have to. You obviously can have your own thoughts. I'm going to judge you very harshly for your contrary thoughts. But these lies, he'll have to contend with them on cross. So during cross, a lot of the lies were about how he lied to people, how he stole money from people, and how he sat down with documents, held their hands, quite literally looked them in the eyes at their darkest moments, when their grandchild died, when people became quadriplegics, when people were at the very depths of their woe, and he's walking with them through the valley of the shadow of death, and he looks them in the eye and says, I will not screw you over, and he does. He cannot say a single thing about those times except, I'm sorry, because that's what he's done his entire life, is just say, I'm sorry, you're right, you caught me, but no explanation. And I know a lot of the commentators, and I disagree with the commentators who said, I'm so tired of hearing about the financial stuff. I thought that was an incredibly effective line of questioning, because obviously what they're trying to get at is they don't care about the finances. What they care about is getting at the question that everyone wants to know. How can a father shoot the brains out of his own flesh and blood? People kill their wives all the time, sucks. But how does a father walk up to his son who is trying to crawl into the kennels away from his murderer, who he thought was his father, and stick the gun under him to watch the brains blow out the back? And how you show that is to show this man who has absolutely no no hesitation whatsoever to do this time and time again to the people in the most desperate situation who look to him for help, who look to him for protection, who look to him for representation, just like his family. And I do think that's effective because he never denied it. He wouldn't defend himself either, which I thought was like, whew.
And if you question that he could hurt the people that he cared about the most, well, listen to what he said. Because the prosecution literally got him to say that right at the end. He literally talks about how he was hurting the people that he cared about the most because it was in his best interest to do so. And it's like, God, I mean, do you realize what you're saying? And look, there are a couple things that people keep saying that drive me insane. The first is, they're losing the jury. The jury doesn't care. Look, you can lose the jury. And there were times in the prosecution's case where they were talking about financial stuff where I was like, you guys need to talk about this less. We get it. Just say how much money he lost. But there's two reasons for that. Number one, because it was cold numbers. Like, you can go through check after check after check. Well, this was for $60,000. Did he steal it? Yes, he stole it. Well, here's for $70,000. Did he steal it? Yes, he stole it. It's like, okay, we get it. He stole a bunch of money, right? But now it's not just about the fact he stole money. It's about the fact that he hurts people and lies to people, and you get into the details of who these people were. When we were just talking about the fact he stole money, who these people were wasn't as relevant. Now, the fact that he sits down in a room with a family that he talks about how close he got to, the son of whom is now not a paraplegic, because he actually corrects Waters about this,
I can't
much
believe
worse,
he did that.
a quadriplegic, and he stole every single dollar from them. If you don't think that's effective cross-examination, I don't know who you are or why you should never be on a jury. Just if you get a jury summons, say, sorry, I can't do this, because that was incredibly effective. And let me tell you, the jury has been praying this whole time that Alec Murdaugh would testify. They're not in a hurry to get it over with. The only people who are in a hurry to get it over with are the defense. So when you hear these defense attorneys, who I love, on all these talking head shows talking about how, well, they need to hurry up and get through this. Yeah, of course you think that, because you want him on and off the stage as quickly as possible, the whatever we call that, the stand, as quickly as possible. But the jury is not bored by this. The prosecution is doing I think a great job. They hammered him all day. The badge stuff was so good. It started off, I was kind of like, I wonder why they're talking about this badge so much. And then, like I said, when they asked him, did you use your badge the night of the boat crash? And he said no. And they pulled out that photograph. I just thought, oh my goodness, I love you people.
You guys are not winging it.
Yes,
you knew exactly what you were doing.
Oh. And look, that was really well planned. What they're going to do tomorrow is going to be great. They're going to have this lined up for tomorrow. And unfortunately, we can't do a live tomorrow because I'm going skiing. But just know that
if I'm bringing a microphone to the hospital, you can bring a microphone onto the plane.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was great.
And this is a great point. The reason you want him on the stand is this is what we call in court. And sorry for being graphic, but the prosecution is giving him a little bit more rope every single question to hang himself by. And he's taking the bait because he's not as smart as he thinks he is. And he is absolutely not knowing where the questioning is going. And so he's walking into every single trap. And here's the thing. Well, there's no trap to walk into if you would just tell the truth, but he can't. He just can't tell the truth. And so what we're seeing is a man who is hanging himself. And if he were smart, he would just stop talking, but he can't help himself because he is loquacious, beyond loquacious. You ever heard, like, just answer the question that's asked you? He's definitely not doing that because he thinks he can walk or talk himself out of every single question. So I loved the cross-examination today. I did not think it was a waste of time. I do think they were trying to get to the end of the day, but they had too much anyways. They were never going to finish today. And tonight, y'all, they're probably working all night. They're not going to sleep tonight, but there's a lot of adrenaline and it's a lot of fun getting to do this specific outline for tomorrow and lining up all their exhibits and making sure that they're putting it in the right order. I do think tomorrow is going to be fantastic because today was already a fantastic display when they probably had an idea where they were going. They obviously had the exhibits lined up, but cross-examination is a live game, right? They had minutes? The lunch break came before the cross-examination. So they had like 15 minutes really to gather themselves before getting up there. And I thought they did a really effective job of drawing out the absolute affluence of this man, define wealth. Like, I don't think I'm that wealthy. You need to embrace that, okay? We know who you are.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Not powerful, not influential.
Not powerful.
It was like...
Not influential. I mean, you are literally on a hunting property, right?
Your grandfather's picture is hanging over you.
I mean, you need to just embrace it. You need to just embrace it, but he doesn't. He won't even take those little steps because honesty is just too much for this man. And then to bring in the badges, I thought at this juncture was really good because it sets everything up. He's already tried to talk his way out of things. We know the reason he's on the stand is to talk his way out of the fact that he's at the kennels minutes before the murder of his family. And then you bring in the fact that this is what he does. He manipulates, and he's done it his entire life. It's all he knows. He only knows how to manipulate with the badges, with this and that. He can't even remember it because this is just his MO.
And even when he takes responsibility and admits it, he couldn't bring himself to name one person that he lied to. Like, people, I'm sorry, like George Washington, you were a great president, but you're completely wrong about this. He could not bring himself to just say, I sat down in that room with John Smith, and he was a great kid, and I looked him in the eyes, and I lied to him. And to me, that would have been much more powerful. The only thing he's willing to admit is what he has to admit. He is only going to admit what he has to admit. This is not some testimony of how honest he is because he's getting up there and admitting the things that have been proven to the nth degree already in court. Like, he has to say he did it. And that's not the question. It's how much is he willing to admit? And the fact that that's all really he will admit to is that, yeah, he stole the money. His disease caused him to steal the money. Or whatever. That's all he'll say. He won't go into details. He won't acknowledge specific instances. He won't talk about people he lied to their face. He won't admit that he's wealthy. He won't admit that he was living off these people's money and living high on the hog off these people's money. He can't bring himself to do that, which, if he's going to testify, he needed to do it. He needed to, like, lay down on the track and get run over by the train, and then the train backs up and run overs him again, and then run overs him again. Like, that's what he needed to do. He needed to be willing to do that. And he's not, because he just can't bring himself to do it. And you know, look, the reason they stuck to the financial stuff today is because they didn't know when it was going to end, and they wanted to have the whole block of stuff to go tomorrow. It's the same reason Pootie Poot wanted to interrupt them and do other witnesses. Like,
can we talk about Pootie Poot? Was okay. So this was after the jury left. I found this highly offensive, especially because of the tactic he's used. Remember, if you've joined us for other lives, a lot of you had said the trial's going so slowly, and it's because Pootie Poot defense will not stipulate to anything. So they've had to call in every custodian of every record and made it be a drawn out process, which they are entitled to do. Absolutely, you have to lay foundation for every piece of evidence. But typically, it's also a tactic for the defense to not stipulate to any of these things, to make them fly out the TikTok video custodian to say, this is a TikTok video. This is how they're stored. This is how, this is a TikTok video, in fact. And then today, after it closes, he says, at this rate, this cross is going to go so long, and I have these two witnesses who are not going to be important at all. They're not going to say who did the murders. They're so boring, and it's going to be so financially devastating for them to have to stay through the weekend. So, Judge, let's break up this incredibly effective cross-examination by the prosecution so that they lose their flow. This is like why you call timeouts in games, in football games, basketball games. So they stop their flow because we are getting crushed. And let me put up two super boring, inane custodians because it's going to cost too much to put them in a hotel over the weekend.
And it's like,
that's what he said.
You just said they were here yesterday. You could have put them on before you put him up. Why did you do that? And the reason he didn't do that, by the way, is they wanted to get Murdaugh up as early as possible. They screwed up by not getting him down earlier. They should have put him up and got him down, not down, but finished with their questioning as quickly as possible to force the prosecution. Like, if they had finished by lunch, then the prosecution has to somehow fill that entire time. Now, maybe they could have done that, but nevertheless, there'd been more pressure on them. It might have made the cross even worse because they're really trying to stretch it out. But they didn't want to put on a couple people before him because that would have put Alec later in the day, which would have meant the prosecution would have been able to do much more of the cross after a night of preparation. And so that's why he didn't put them on beforehand. And then for him to do that, it was just like, come on, man. I mean, the judge, bless him. He has the patience of a saint.
He was suffering no fools, though. He was suffering no fools.
That's true.
His response was like, yeah, I'm not going to break a prosecution for this. They can stay the weekend. It's fine. Especially when we're talking about a 5-week trial. I mean, this is an expensive trial.
And as Lolly points out, they're staying in like a $20,000 a week resort while they do this trial. Money is not their primary concern. Move over to the Holiday Inn, Poot, and then we'll hear you talk about money. Like, goodness gracious, man.
And by the way, in case you were wondering, I've almost never seen a cross-examination get stopped in the middle. The reason they want to do that, of course, is to throw the prosecution off their game and to stop the flow that they obviously have in terms of questioning so that they have time to, they're not supposed to, but coach their clients and have the jury forget what was said and be bored with a couple boring witnesses before they have to face the music again. But thankfully, that's not going to happen.
Let me caution you guys one thing. One thing that you should just remember as you go into tomorrow. This is not a movie, okay? There's not going to be a code red moment where Alec Murdaugh's like, you're damn right, I killed him and I'd do it again, or whatever. I guess that was actually a time to kill. That's not going to happen, okay? He's not going to break in the middle of cross-examination and admit he did it. That's not the way this works. And if you're looking for that, that's not what's going to happen. The prosecution is doing a couple things. Number one, I don't know if they're doing this intentionally. And honestly, I don't even know what all the rules are on this because this is something that almost never happens. But if Alec Murdaugh wins, if he's acquitted of this trial, congratulations, my friend. You have just sentenced yourself to multiple decades in prison for all of the financial crimes that the prosecution has now gotten you to admit to on cross-examination. So that's another reason going through all these financial crimes and having him admit to each one is valuable. So there's that thing.
I thought that was really funny, by the way, because I was like, I haven't studied all the financial charges, but I'm pretty sure he's only admitted to the 700,000 one, right? I don't think he's pled guilty to the other 90 plus, but he kind of pled guilty to all of them today on the stand.
He basically did, and it was in Waters making him go through the individual ones as opposed to this sort of, because the mass acceptance of responsibility is not acceptance of responsibility for any particular charge, right?
No, he used names and he used specifics about their cases. He even said, walk me through that case.
Right, yeah, forcing him to basically say, yeah, I stole from that person. Well, that's count one, you know? Like, I mean, so there was that, which I thought was great. But, you know, some of y'all will say really flattering things that are ridiculous about how you wish Alice and I were doing this cross-examination, which I love that you would say that, but that's this guy is much better than we are. But remember, everything we do is closing. Right? Like the podcast is closing. This is closing. It's wrapping everything up. It's giving you the facts and bringing it all together. Whatever happens in the cross, whether you think it's great or not great, or you wish you'd asked more questions, or you wish you'd done this, or you wish you'd done that, whatever happens, and whatever happens with the rebuttal witnesses, it's all going to come together in the closing. That's going to be when they lay out the story in the way we do a lot of times and bring together the timeline and the lies he told and how he lied here and how he lied here and how this doesn't match and all the other stuff. It's not going to happen in some theatrical cross-examination moment, but all this information that they're drawing out will be brought together in the end, and that's really when the story will be told.
Absolutely. Yeah, we didn't have to put this case together. That's way more work. So, you know, give the actual prosecution and the lawyers credit.
And cross-examining a lawyer is hard.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's hard. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. He's done this many, many times. You know, I mean,
and you can tell that his stock answers are exactly what lawyers say. Why it's really annoying, right? I can't remember with specificity. I'm not going to speculate about that. I mean, maybe it's coming off well to the jurors. It's very annoying as a lawyer. Even as the objections are happening, he interjected some argument for objections, which I thought was completely inappropriate as well. He knows what's going on generally in terms of not stepping into it, you know, and his answers are pretty stock, as we would expect as well. But man, how's it been an hour already?
He tried 5 criminal cases, number one. He's a civil lawyer. He's tried tons of civil lawyers. Number two, 5 cases is actually, you know, not that insignificant. I mean, in a world where not many cases go to trial. And his father, may I remind everyone, was the solicitor for 30 years, and he was hanging around with him the whole time. This man knows what he's doing. And so he was always going to be tough. to cross-examine, and I think it's been pretty impressive. I just love the badge stuff, man. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. It was great.
The badge stuff was great. He really hung himself on that as well. And here's the thing. I have to remind you guys, of course, in a case like this, the evidence file is going to be massive. These pictures didn't come out of nowhere. These pictures are part of his evidence file that he received. So whether he saw it or not is another question, because there is a lot of evidence that they have to go through and you have to prioritize what's important to look at. But this is not a gotcha moment. He knows these photos exist, and also he knows he does this because he does this regularly. But still, he's willing to lie because lying is what he does best.
I mean, look, I'm willing to stay as long as you guys want to stay and talk about this stuff, talk about anything. I do have a hearing at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it won't make my life worse. But I'm going. If we want to go until 8 and then I can do the hearing, that's fine. So
I think I'm actually impressed with us in an hour. I think we've covered everything that happened today with his testifying, which, Brett, you completely called, and I think he had to do. With the timing of everything, it's going to go tomorrow. I think cross-examination will end tomorrow, but I'm not sure that the recross will necessarily finish tomorrow. It will be in their interest to finish it, but I'm not sure whether they'll finish before Monday.
Yeah, let me just say, I mean, I love Creighton Waters, but he's not going to finish in 3 to 4 hours. When he said that to the judge today, I was like,
3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, my friend. You're going to finish maybe
Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Monday, actually.
Look, once again, this whole TikTok generation thing where everything has to happen fast, days and days of cross-examination when a defendant testifies happen all the time. It happens all the time. There's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of information to delve into, and they may go into that. And you might be bored by it, but get over it. Juries deal with a lot more boring information than this, and they've done it in this case. There has been far more boring days of data than this one. I mean, yesterday when the defense expert was talking about cell phone stuff, and it was like, can we get more in the weeds than we are? I'm not sure that we can. That was far more boring than this. So we'll see how long it goes. I mean, I think they will finish tomorrow, or at least Waters will finish tomorrow. We'll see if Murdaugh gets off the stand. I think Murdaugh, I don't know where he's getting the money to pay this group of people, but he may be paying for this expert to stay over the weekend. Poor guy.
Well, Brett, this has been incredibly fun. And by the way, we never did an intro. We just literally dived into
it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
I think people know what they were getting into. I don't think anybody was confused.
I meant for making this an episode.
Oh, it's fine. I'm just going to take the two. I'm not even going to send it to Jason. I'm just going to take the two, stick them together, and release it. So.
Oh, this is awesome.
Well, look. So we're nearing an hour. Alice is pregnant, so she needs to go to bed. But are there any questions you guys have before we sign off for tonight? This is the rare instance where y'all can ask us questions.
Yes.
If
How many
you're
people
curious,
are here now?
800 people are here.
Whoa.
Now. So is there anything you want to know before we sign off about this
new poll? Yeah, I don't know if that's actually true. I know several people have referenced that there were jurors who are crying. Maybe.
And maybe they were. I mean, it's sad. Jurors cry all the time and then convict.
Yeah, I can't help but cry when someone else is crying. Or also, they may be really sad that someone could be so good at lying. Oh, I'm sorry, not good. Someone who could be so bold-faced lying about the murder of their own family members. So that might be part of it, too.
And look, I just want to say, and I don't want to be too aggressive on this, but it's just true. He did this, okay? He killed his family. I don't know if he'll be convicted. I don't know. Maybe there's not enough evidence. We always talk about there are times where you know who did it, but you don't have enough evidence to convict. If you don't think there's been enough evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, that's fine. He absolutely did this, and I hope you all know that. I hope you know this man is evil. He did this. He not only killed his family, but he has done horrible things to dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of people over the course of his life. He is an evil man, an evil person. I hope he's convicted. I think he's obviously guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but this man is a scourge on South Carolina. And there's just no question about that. And I don't know how anybody can deny that. So like I said, if you think they didn't prove it, that's fine. If you think the fact that he lied about being at the scene of the murders within minutes of when the murders were committed, by the way, with guns from the family, and then visited his mother to create an alibi and was there for less than 20 seconds when he called 911 to talk about things that, you know, there's no way he could have done. If you think he's innocent, that's fine. I'm not going to hold that against you, or if you think he's not guilty, but he is not innocent. He did this. And I feel like, you know, it's worth sort of acknowledging that he is absolutely the murderer of his family.
He is absolutely the murderer. I think there is plenty of evidence. I do not know how the jury is going to vote on this, because you never know how the jury is going to vote, especially in a situation where I don't know this town. This is his town. The jurors are truly his peers, people who do know this family, and they did not move the venue. So I don't know what the effect is. What happens to him if he's caught on the stand lying? They have to bring a separate charge for perjury. They're probably not going to do that because there's so many other financial crimes and it takes a lot of resources to bring those types of cases. So it's not that he's off the hook. There is a charge for it, but whether the juice is worth the squeeze is another question. If he lies too much and he's like repeatedly caught in it and the judge is sufficiently angry, the judge can hold him in contempt, which basically is just a way of saying, I'm going to throw you in jail unless you start cooperating and stop lying. That's happened before. It's happened in cases that Brett and I have tried before. Nothing's going to happen to him really for lying, to be totally honest, even though there are grounds to bring charges for it. And yes, he is a family annihilator. He did this. The evidence, if you look at the cold hard evidence, is all there to convict him. If you are buying his story, just know that, you know, everyone reacts to how people talk differently, but this is a man who is lying through his teeth. He's done this a lot. He's not doing a good job. Even if he's convincing some people, he is testifying like a classic narcissist. And we've seen this in our defendants. Typically, it's the narcissists who take the stand, and this is how they communicate. And he is falling into all of those categories. And I mean that as a diagnosis. I don't mean that just as like a negative, you know, characteristic. We'll see. We'll see how he does on cross tomorrow. So far, he's been able to hold his cool long enough, and that is his goal. He is trying not to get angry. Waters is trying to get a rise out of him, and he's gotten a rise a little bit, but I think he's going to be pretty good at holding it together because he doesn't have any shame. He doesn't care when he's caught in a lie. That's partly why I don't think he's going to completely lose his cool. It's because it doesn't matter. When you catch me in a lie, I turn red and I want to die in front of you. That's not him. It does not matter. You can show him hard, cold evidence that he is lying and it will not affect him.
And there's just, you know, I mean, I could talk about this for a long time. And if you want to know the answer to why he did this, you need to listen to 7 more episodes of The Prosecutors, because at the end of those 7 episodes, I know I said 1 of 6. That's not going to happen. It's going to be more like...
When we released 1 of 6, we were already
on 7. So I was like, oops. Anyway, and then we'll talk about the real motive, which I think we've figured out because we're brilliant people. I will say one thing. One of the things he said today, which blew my mind because it had never been so concretely discussed, was the fact that, you know, this place, this farm that's so massive, it's over 1,000 acres, and it's his favorite place, and it's where he's got there's so much equity in it, and it's where he's getting all his money from and all this other stuff, is in Maggie's name. She had 100% ownership of Moselle until he said it. I knew that she owned Edisto or whatever, right?
But
and I actually
didn't know about Moselle.
Right, I thought maybe that was the motive, was to get Edisto, or however you pronounce it. But today's about Moselle, and he says, my theory, as you guys know, is that guilty people always tell a little bit of the truth when they talk. He said, you know, I had to get money from Moselle, and in order to get it, she had to sign it, but she always signed. But here's the thing that changed. In May, a month before the murders, she found a bag full of pills. She found his bag full of tons of Oxycontin. And I wonder if after she found all those pills and spent the rest of the day Googling what those pills were and then confronted him afterwards, as we know, because Paul texted him about it or left a voicemail about it, if maybe she said, you know what, the $600,000 that you asked your buddy who's now in federal prison, whether he could get you the money from the farm, I'm not signing off on that because I know what you're doing. And I mean, like, just stuff like that. Blows your mind.
And we're not going to get into this because you have a hearing in like 12 hours, less than 12 hours, 11 hours. But I'm going to say something very controversial. But after he testified today, I feel pretty confident about it. We know we talked about this drug habit, oxy addiction, $50,000 a week on oxy. He may have taken drugs. He may have taken oxy, whatever. May have had opioids. I do not think he had an addiction in the sense of an addiction that was driving him to do these sorts of things. We deal with people on massive opioid addictions all the time. White collar criminals to violent criminals, they span the gamut. We even petition the court to send them to rehab all the time. I'm not saying that all addicts act the same, but based on his testimony and based on the way he acted and the way he talked about how the addiction affected his life, he does not present as someone whose life had been changed by this addiction, that he became a different person who now was capable of committing these financial crimes and capable of committing these murders. He may have taken lots of things. He could have taken cocaine. He could have taken heroin for fun. He could have done whatever he wanted to get high, to feel good, whatever. But he did not have the type of addiction that changed and altered his brain to make him capable of something that he wasn't previously capable of. And I know that's going to be very controversial.
And while we're riffing on this, just to piggyback off of what Alice said, at one point in the cross-examination, Clayton Waters attempted to bring up the sheriff who had to resign, and the defense was able to stop that line of questioning. And my wife and I were curious. I wonder what exactly that's about. And we looked it up, and that man had to resign for financial improprieties. And do you know what he said about the reason he had gotten into financial improprieties? Well, he had an alcohol and a drug addiction problem, and he had to pay for that. And it's like, I wonder where Alec Murdaugh came up with his excuse for why he had to do all the things he did. And it's just...
And how do you get sympathy for it, right? Because greed is not sympathetic. Addiction in the midst of the opioid crisis is.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is just, like
full
I said, look, y'all can criticize Waters all day long in his cross-examination, but the fact that he has secured a couple hundred convictions on financial crimes, no matter what happens here, is good enough for me, because this man needs to be in prison for the rest of his life. And I don't care how he ends up there or where he goes. You know, if he ends up in some nice minimum
fraud.
security.
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Like Al Capone him if you have to. But the funny thing about it, you guys know us. We never get involved in the whole conspiracy thing. I mean, I've never listened to the Murdaugh murders with Mandy Matney. I know a lot of y'all don't like her, and you say she's too conspiratorial, and I kind of bought into that. I was like, I don't want to listen to that. I don't need all that crap. Now I'm like, what is she on to? Because it seems like this guy is about as corrupt as he could possibly be. There is no conspiracy you could tell me about Alec Murdaugh that I wouldn't believe, because he is that kind of person.
I totally believe there's some sex ring going on.
Wouldn't shock me.
$50,000 a week wouldn't shock me. Like Epstein-style sort of things happening, because I absolutely. And maybe that's why he's so willing to go to trial for these financial crimes and for the murder, because it's so small potatoes compared to what he's actually being covered up. But that's another live.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, exactly. We've probably rambled for enough. I don't know, Alice. Are you guys sick of us?
So fun,
there's still 800 people here. I mean, I don't know.
I can't believe. I mean, we can stay on, but like, I do think we've like covered what happened today. I do think tomorrow will be fascinating. You have a hearing tomorrow, so you should like rest and whatnot. But
I don't need to rest. Alice is trying. Alice needs to rest.
I don't need to rest. I mean, I probably should, but
I love talking to you, Alice. I mean,
well, we did talk all day because my phone literally is about to die.
So you guys don't know this yet, although we talk about this in our episodes. All of you know that Alice is pregnant at this point, I think, and it will be having a child at some point. We've got the studio set up in the hospital. We're going to live stream the whole thing. It's going to be amazing. But because of this, we have been recording basically nonstop. So Alice and I have recorded essentially every night for as long as I can remember at this point.
It's been a lot. This is like trial. So if you guys have been with us since last year at this time we were getting ready for like a month-long trial, and we recorded John Bonet like crazy people over Christmas. I mean, it was just like morning and night because it was the Christmas holidays. We like abandoned our children during the holidays and just recorded. And that's kind of what we've done here too, because we want you to get all of Murdaugh. And poor Jason, who edits our podcast and is on here right now, he must be like, guys, lay off for a little bit.
I mean, we're seriously 10 episodes ahead at this point. So
yes, we have, you know don't know how babies are going to be. My babies are like very, not good sleepers. So, but yeah. Okay. So thanks for being on Baby Watch, but there will probably be a baby in the next week. So I don't know. Have fun.
But
Brett.
the great thing is, after we have the baby, until the baby's about 2 months old, you'll get to hear us talk about in the episodes how Alice is still pregnant because we recorded so many episodes. And at the end, we're always like, by the next episode, who knows? Maybe we'll have a baby. But we don't because it's the next day. Or in one case, we recorded 2 episodes in one day, and it was like she didn't have the baby in the last hour.
We took a break and got some more water and came back. And and it was awesome. And yeah, Roro is definitely on the list of baby names. So, we'll just have to see what happens. But Brett, it's always awesome. I'm going to miss recording every single day with you when you go on the ski trip. Have fun. Bring me back some snow or something.
If the verdict comes back while I'm on the ski trip, we'll talk about it.
I'll call you in and just like FaceTime you and we'll just record.
There's a not insignificant possibility that between my ski trip and Alice's pregnancy that there may be a little bit of a break in live episodes for the prosecutors. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. This is the last call for questions. If you have any questions.
This might be the last call for questions for a while.
This is the last call for questions for a while. So if you have any questions, let us know now. We're about to wrap it up. Anything anybody wants to ask. I'm giving you a second because I know there's always a little bit of a delay.
Lag. I know.
I just want you to know, I am not the one driving Alice to record constantly. It is Alice driving me to record constantly because I'm always like laying on the couch watching Frozen 2 or something. And all of a sudden Alice is like, hey, do you want to record? And so there I am. But
oh my goodness.
All right. Okay. What kind of bourbon should we drink? There's so many that are good. I will talk about this for a second.
Okay,
so,
I have some bourbon.
It depends on where you're from. If you're from a place where you can have a lot of good bourbon, there's one that I really like that is rare called Rowan's Creek. Fantastic. Really good. If you're not a place where you can get sort of rare bourbons, Basil Hayden's is really good. If you like that. I'm a big fan. And then always Four Roses is a solid one. And just if you just want to drink bourbon and Coke, get yourself some Maker's Mark. You can't go wrong.
Love it. Y'all go drink. It's been real. This has been so fun. Brett, I'll be texting you tomorrow during cross-examination.
Sounds good. If I'm still in my hearing, make sure you keep me up to date while I'm dealing with all my work issues. Will. So, all right, guys. Well, this has been awesome. This has been great. We'll be back later with more things. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors.
I'm recording.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're ready to start whenever you are.
Couldn't be more ready. I don't know how to. Oh, there's everybody.
Are you ready?
I'm sorry. I just can't get over the pawpaw and the Roro and the mags and the bus.
I know. The whole thing is something. It's something. Okay, here we go.
Let's do this. I shouldn't have made you do that. It's too late, and it's too much bourbon in you. I can't believe you said onomatopoeia without cracking up.
I don't know what that word means really, but I thought it fit, kind of. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness.